The topic for this discussion is COVID revealed several cracks involving the processing of livestock. How can Farm Bureau policy support easing government regulations to ensure long-term economic viability for local animal processing facilities while ensuring the health of workers and that a healthy product is still delivered to consumers? Contestants, please begin with your opening statements in random order.
If you look at the beef processing numbers, in May of 2020, steer and heifer processing was down by 41% nationally over May of 2019. This caused a challenge in our large-scale processing, but opened avenues for small and medium processors to fulfill a local need. I'm excited to have a conversation today about the regulations and what policy Farm Bureau members can build to support those avenues.
72% of restaurant owners say a steak on the specials board significantly increases foot traffic. Unfortunately, COVID called our bluff, and in a lot of ways, we failed that test. I'm looking forward to our discussion today because it's not a question of if we will be shut down again or another pandemic will come or bad things will come down the pipeline, but of when.
There's no doubt the past 2 years has been difficult for the livestock production industry. We have seen many different interruptions in our supply chain, ranging from our employees, our safety, and even in the meat case itself. I look forward to our discussion today about what we as Farm Bureau can do to help manage this supply chain. Thank you.
Disruptions to livestock processing have been obvious to everyone during the COVID-19 pandemic, both consumers and farmers alike. Panic buying and disease spreading, COVID-19 spreading through livestock processing facilities have led to things like empty shelves and booked up local processors and even animal euthanasia. No one can deny that we need a long-term solution to livestock processing, and I look forward to discussing that with all of you today.
Contestants, you may now begin the discussion.
So I think when we look at this one, we have to see where it is hitting home, and that's what we get to eat for dinner, right? So when COVID came about, all of a sudden, meat shelves were empty. And I think first I'd like to hear, we hit on that a little bit, panic buying, shutdowns of processors because of safety risks. What can we do to improve that moving forward? Because there's policy out there already, but what can we do next?
I think moving forward, there's a few issues here at play. One is a labor shortage, and that comes not only to the inspectors, but also down to the people processing that meat and everywhere in between, right? So labor is a huge factor here. Now, are people not working because they're afraid of getting sick or they're afraid of conditions or whatever that is, I think is a question that could be discussed today. Another thing that we have to take into consideration is our government policies kind of slowing down our small and mid-sized processors? And I would say if you ask a smaller mid-sized processor, they would say yes. And so how can we as Farm Bureau members and then nationally as an organization help to push those things forward to ensure longevity and success of our meat packers and eventually our agricultural system as a whole?
It's a good point, Sarah, and I think you're exactly right. I mean, we need to find good opportunity for our small to medium-sized packers. Talking to a producer just the other day, and that has their own facility as well. A little bit smaller, but they were talking that there has been aid, right? We have seen some aid go out. It was going to a place, but for people to become USDA certified. There was no aid given out to people who are already USDA certified. We're scratching the surface, but we're not following through and totally giving the opportunity to everybody who truly needs it.
Yeah, I think you're talking about that ramp-up program that allowed for processors to make changes. There was grant money out there, quite a bit, that allowed that changes to their processing plants to be made to allow them to open up avenues for USDA inspection. And I think that's you're right. That's great for those to increase the avenue. But what about those who already were? What were the limitations there? Also, Michigan does things a little bit differently than other states. So there are states out there that have state inspection. So USDA inspectors are a challenge. There's not enough of them, be it a labor shortage, be it not. I'm curious, we've talked about it before. It's currently in tomorrow they'll review policy 27 to talk about, is that an option? Does state inspection make sense for Michigan to help increase some of that where we're missing the mark on those USDA inspected plants?
I'm glad that you brought up that you're right, that is in our current policy, and I think that is a great solution here, is to go with some type of program that we can have here in Michigan for livestock that's processed and sold within the state, because I know where I live, I have to travel more than twice as far to get to a USDA processor, and it's really difficult as our farm and my family has started a retail business to be able to sell those USDA products, and it's really difficult to go twice as far for that. And I know there's a lot of farms and a lot of producers in that situation, and I really do think that Michigan-based system, and there are other states that have that in place already, that allowing more open opportunities for processors, and I think that's really a foot in the door for those smaller, medium-sized processors instead of having a USDA inspector there. I think it's a great opportunity.
In that space, I guess the question becomes, is there any reason that a state inspector causes any further health risks? So if we look at the continuation of the question, we want to continue to make sure we have a food supply that is safe for consumers. There's states that are doing it that work. I don't know if anybody saw it or had thought through that. Is there any reason that a state inspection can't qualify for the same health and safety for our consumers as a USDA inspection does? Is the USDA portion a label that makes people feel safer in consuming their products? How does that tie in?
I think that as we are looking at designing kind of that program or that role to create a state inspector, we as an organization and our partners, whether that's, the National Association of Grocers or the USDA or the FDA or, the American Beef Association, whatever that looks like, if we can hold those same standards to ensure health and safety, not only is it better looking to the outside world, right? We look like the leader in the industry, but also it ensures that we don't have to worry about things that we might have to if those standards were a little bit more lax.
And I think there's many processors out there right now who are doing custom processing. They're packaging those individual cuts. They're creating a safe product for the consumer to take home, and it's just buying it in bulk really is what the customer's doing, and that's really not for everybody. So I think that really the difference is they'd be doing the same thing as just having that state inspector present to be able to have that label for that to be sold for individual sale instead of a bulk product.
And that's really where that ties in, right? So we talk about this as agriculturalists. We perform best practices. We're not looking to do something that is at risk for our consumers. It's the same with our meat packers. They're not looking to cause a foodborne illness. They're not looking to be the person who causes the risk. They want people to have a safe food supply. And so, like you said, the people who are doing custom exempt, those who are not jumping through the hoops for USDA inspection, they're not doing anything different to offer a safe food supply. They just simply, it's a financial component that causes those limitations. And so I think that's huge. There's a message there, and that USDA inspection ties right to that, right? I guess working off of that, there's an additional act that takes that state inspection further, because there's states that are doing it already. So at the national level, there's an act called the Direct Act, which opens up avenues so those state inspected processors or state inspected producers can ship over state lines. which that went to the House first last summer and then again this winter. So there's limitations there that somebody doesn't see, and I'd be curious again. So just starting to prompt and ask some questions. Why? What's our fear, or what maybe could we as a Farm Bureau organization help promote that? What can we say that would make more sense to our legislators?
That's a good point, Katie, and I think truly crossing state lines, that's when people start to get a little nervous. Now, is that a big deal or not? That can depend on the program we build, right? So I really do see that as Farm Bureau's role of, hey, just because we have our own programs does not mean we can't talk together. And if nothing else, get a standardized system going to and provide funding for them to actually be able to, whether it is necessary supplies, safety equipment, whatever it is, but so we can do some cross-state line transport.
Not only necessary funding, but also a point person to help get that process started and fill out those applications and make sure that the check marks on that list are being completed in an efficient way, because we all are short on time, and our meat processors, are now backed up 14 to 18 months. And so if we could, as an organization, have some sort of point person or a point agency to take on that role, I think that would be a great use of resources, and it would really help out not only our meat processors, but also our farmers and ranchers.
And I think there's great examples, as we're talking about the cooperation between state and the national level. When you look at the dairy industry, I mean, as a dairy farm, you're inspected at the federal level, you're inspected at the state level, usually maybe who you're selling your milk with, whether that's a cooperative or a processing plant is doing inspections, and they all work cooperatively, and those systems already exist. And I think it's just opening that door of communication and saying, hey, we do this in other industries, why can't we also work together in the meat industry to make it better for those smaller processors and more lucrative for them to be able to work with an inspector to keep moving forward.
And I think when it comes to doing that through, the question comes back to easing government regulations. What are those government regulations that are really holding us back? I know that the use of wastewater and how that's handled is a huge, huge limiting factor, especially when you consider that just like farmers, the average age of meat packers is getting up there. It's getting into the 60s and things like that. And those people don't have $500,000 to invest in a water treatment plant. So I know there's grants available through the American Rescue Act, and there's lots of low interest loans, or I guess policy is pushing toward low interest loans. So what other things on that front can we do to really pull back those government regulations while still maintaining a safe product?
I think the wastewater component is a big one. I think, when you look at what that investment will be, it takes people out of the game. Like there's just, and that's here. That's a Michigan thing right now. It's coming. It's out there for conversation. And so when we're in a space where we don't even have those people to begin with, like you said, those appointments are way out the book. How do you support something in that fashion? And I don't know. I mean, we're in Michigan. We are looking at policy in addition to wastewater. We're also looking at in our book again this year is looking at, are we supporting training for this? So we want to talk safe food supply. Somebody has to know what they're doing. So. That avenue is not really out there, at least not in Michigan. I've watched when I worked in the meats lab at MSU, we did a couple of trainings where veterans could come in and they could learn the basics of processing to help fill that labor need. But again, it's not really standard practice to train. This is a on the job, figure it out kind of deal. And so. Having policy that supports that we want to look at those avenues, I think, is another really great opportunity.
I think you're right. I think education has got to be key here. I mean, how much are we losing in this pathway just because of lack of understanding what it takes to get either certified or or at least to make those initial steps, right? So if somebody is at the point where they need to reinvest, how do we help them, right? How do they know what avenues they need to take in order to be certified in the way they need to be? I think Farm Bureau can play an excellent role in that, and we can make committees that can actually put that information together, make it available for these small, medium-sized processors, and help them make that financial decision on for them.
And not only for the people who are looking at reinvesting, but new people getting into the field. Look at kids, look at people who are going into the trades, or people who are looking for a career shift. We're in the middle of the Great Resignation. And so taking a look at what does the market need and how can we fill that need in a way that ensures longevity of that meat market is really, really key here. And so, that could be a trades program, it could be a certificate, it could be something, it doesn't have to be a bachelor's degree or anything super long term. It's probably better if it's not, right? But if we can really create some sort of program or certification to address that need, both for people looking to get in a more fulfilling field and also for us, that would be mutually beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a great point to talk about the training and how we're going to get people interested, because labor is such a big part of this. When you look at this topic as a whole and what caused the disruption in the processing of livestock is really, early it was the change in the consumer demand, but now, it transformed into those bottlenecks of labor. And when it came to processing plants shutting down, and I think getting people interested in things like that is very important. And going forward, labor in general is a huge problem now in every industry, across everything. Everybody's looking to hire, and I think that's something that definitely going forward, I think we need to continue to address. I know it's something that in Michigan we're kind of moving towards that the unemployment for people in September started to end, so we're getting some of those people back to work. But when you're looking at 2020, at the height of it, an unemployment rate of 13%, and people are okay with not having jobs at that time because of the pandemic going on. I mean, how do you fill those spots, those jobs, those things that still need to be done? That's really difficult going forward.
And how do you motivate people to work when they aren't motivated by the work itself, right? So having people find fulfillment in what they do, and meat processing is not the most glamorous job, right? Like, let's be honest. But if we can look at this like you are providing meat, you are providing joy for a lot of people. We think about food, and there is joy there, there is culture there is so much to be had. And so if we can take a look at what could being a meat processor provide for a person who doesn't have anything, who is homeless, who is just coming back from whatever situation, and take a look at what could be beneficial for them as well. I think that's a great place to start.
I like that. I like that twist of coming back to creating a job that gives you something in return, right? And even if that's just filling your cup. Because you're right, the meat packing industry, I walk those plants, they're not glamorous. But I will tell you that it is an encouraging job. And you're right, that food source for others. It's just like why we do what we do in agriculture in general, because we're building our community. It's not just about a job for any of us, I don't think. I think it's about why looking at the bigger picture and those around us and supporting those around us. And so again, tying that in, that's huge. But when we look at that, and we talk about that job from a safety standpoint, because when we want to look at that, we're talking about health of our workers too. So we've talked about providing safe food for consumers. We've talked about how we open up avenues to be USDA inspected. But now, how do we present to those workers that they're not just a worker because we need to fill a spot in the line? What do we have to do to make sure that they feel safe too?
Somebody was telling me that in a meat packing plant, you are shoulder to shoulder. It is tight. That carcass is not that big, and you get so many bodies around it, and there's a lot of work to be done. And so yeah, exactly. How can we just really create safety there? And so I don't know if part of it includes changing the way that that carcass is taken apart, right? Or if we can separate those components quicker, or whatever that looks like. But if we can ensure safety of our workers, then we're all going to be better for it long term.
I think that's right, Sarah. And I think, so it's tough for us to say, especially as Farm Bureau, to just say, hey, I hope you're safe, right? Be careful. I think it's our job to take that active role, right? What can we get you? Can we get you the proper safety equipment? Can we provide training for your employees on how to do things safely? Doing that role and providing initial workshops, whatever it is, to be able to work with them. Because as a business owner, you try to think about safety every day, right? That's your biggest fear, is that one of your employees goes home not okay. But it's not always easy to take the extra time to really hone in on safety. And I think that's something that we as Farm Bureau can do to help provide an extra step for that business owner to focus on.
I think safety can really even be part of a workplace culture. And I think if you can put in all the safety regulations that you want, but to have actual buy-in, and I think the culture ties back into the buy-in of why you want to be part of this business, why do you want to actually work here, what are you actually getting out of it? I think that those things really help build a culture, and I think that that's a real opportunity to go through, that Farm Bureau would have to provide some trainings to employers or whatever it may be, to what is your workplace culture? How do we improve your workplace culture? How do we include safety and get employee buy-in to that safety? Because really you can put in all the regulations you want, but to actually get them to buy in and believe that this is important, there's a reason we're doing this, and we really need to move forward to have a safe workplace that everyone can enjoy and be a part of.
We talked about that when we did our safety discussion meet at our district level. There's got to be somewhat of an incentive to be safe, right? So getting the job done quick is the incentive in most of our lives, and when we're moving through a task. Where's that level of saying, okay, so yes, I never want anybody to go home safe, but we also have deadlines. We also have way too many animals in the cooler that need to be cut. How that buy-in, I guess that's the question, right? What's the incentive for being safe outside of taking home all 10 of your fingers? Is there support there? Do we have a incentive program on the business level to say, if you know, so many days without a farm accident or without a processor accident, now there's this incentive, or you're certified in safety in some way, shape, or form. I guess I'm curious, because again, you don't want to go home without all 10 fingers, but there's in our generation especially, incentive is part of the deal, right? We need it.
I think the incentive has to be, both for the organization itself and the guy who wants to keep all 10 fingers, or the lady who wants to keep all 10 fingers. And so if we could kind of create like a tier there, and not that there has to be lots of tiers, but both for the organization to create a safe culture, and also for the individual themselves, and just really weave that in on the ground level. When we're hiring, when we're training, when we're doing day-to-day processing, if safety is a part of that, then all the better.
Yeah, I agree. I think this could be part of, maybe even part of when we're talking about this Michigan certification, if we could build a type of safety program into that. I mean, it's got to be a culture developed on somebody's own, their own operation, right? So when we're talking about other safety cues and what Farm Bureau is doing to help, we can include that in type of program, some type of incentive program, but I think we can also tie that in on more of a state level and actually get rewarded for certain facilities that are doing it safely. They're trying to do it right.
There could even potentially be incentives, as we were talking about incentives at the business level, is that you could get some type of certification, and through Farm Bureau we have this great insurance company. Maybe that you get some type of incentive for going through a safety training, or your facility is inspected. There's already discounts for things like having fire extinguishers around, so why not add something specific for safety in some other way, whether specifically for meat processing, some type of certification you can go through that can actually give you a discount, and you can actually see a financial benefit on that side of things.
It seems like a partnership with OSHA or, different organizations. Maybe it is the National Association of Grocers or different safety organizations, and really partnering those two together, or those 3 or 4 or 5, would be a great place to just really come full circle with it, right? Because we want to reiterate that safety point on all sides.
I think we've covered a lot.
Yeah, you're right. You're very right.
No, I think we covered a lot, and I think we've done a good job at kind of covering individual issues that we can see as cracks within the processing of livestock. I'd like to circle back more and go over, as a business owner, where do I need my support, right? And especially starting off, trying to start a new business, where can I see that support? And I think Farm Bureau playing this role is going to do an excellent job providing that support to a small business owner, keeping in that mind, keeping safety in mind, and as well keeping in grant and funding in mind.
And supporting resources in that, right? Like, where are those people who I need in my court? Where are those organizations that have something that I need that is for cheap or for free, right? Or they have a person to help me fill out that paperwork. Both the support and the resources is a huge place where Farm Bureau can come in facilitating those relationships.
Well, and we, again, talked about this throughout the day in a couple of different rooms, but Farm Bureau, at the end of the day, really does create the community. So it creates the connection to find what you need. So yes, it's facilitating resources, or here's a list of grants accessible in the meat industry itself, but it also can open up the doors to that person who already knows, and we don't have to recreate the wheel. So at the end of the day, in where this organization falls in some of the most important space, I think is just opening those doors, right? Building those relationships and making those connections.
They say if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. And I think when we're looking at the long-term economic viability, we have to go together. And so partnerships and community and creating a safe and effective place for everybody to work that advances that Michigan agriculture is a really important piece.
Thank you, contestants. You now have 1 minute to prepare your closing statement. Audience, please remain silent while the contestants prepare. Pens down. Contestants, you may begin with your closing statements in random order.
Well, we talked about a lot today, and I think it was a super great conversation. To look at the final, where we ended, we've got to take a few things back, and I'm excited to be able to do that, especially in the next couple of days as we finish talking about that Policy 27, but then even further into our communities. We're looking to educate people about the meat industry, how they can be a part of it, and why they should. We're looking to figure out where that funding is accessible and how we as Farm Bureau can present that out there and how we can support them in lowering the regulations and continuing to support the growth of our small and medium processors. I think today opened up a lot of thought processes, and I can't wait to see where that conversation goes tomorrow with those who will really get to talk that policy. Thanks, guys.
The United States is already a leader when it comes to food safety and accessibility. Improving those practices from a community standpoint, from connecting resources, and then from a policy standpoint, like Katie talked about, connecting tomorrow, creating those policies, changing the policies that we need to, and then moving forward in the next couple of months when we talk with our legislators, when we go to Lansing Legislative Seminar, when we invite those politicians out onto our farm, continuing on that conversation is really, really important piece, not only for the agricultural community as a whole, but day to day on our farming operations.
So I want to thank you all. This has really been a really great discussion, and I really got two main takeaways today. One is really decreasing that regulation for those small and medium-sized processors. How can we do that, whether it be creating a state program that we've already seen work in other areas of the country. I think that's a great place to start. And the other thing we really touched on was the safety of workers and how we can move forward that, how we can incentivize that to get the buy-in from the workers, and how Farm Bureau can really be a community to get ideas from others and how we can move forward and learn from each other as we try to solve this problem going forward.
There's no doubt the pandemic has changed a lot of things for livestock producers. I enjoyed our conversation today, and I really thought we got three very good action takeaways from this event. First is safety, right? Providing safety programs to small and medium processors. Second, getting the correct information on how those processors can manage their business moving forward. And third, finding our own Michigan way to certify products. I think using these action items, Michigan Farm Bureau can make a great impact and help us get on the right track. Thank you.